Good God. I love this thing! Welcome back to the channel. I've been putting this video off for a bit, but it was the original basis for the series Buy Once, Cry Once. Today we are going to be talking about Heckler & Koch long slide pistols chambered in 9mm. I was hoping to be talking about all the HK stuff I have, but COVID came along and made the world a crazy place where there's no ammunition and gun shelves are bare. So the MP5, the P7M8, and the 416 I plan to include in this video will have to wait until they have them in hand. Before we go any further, I want you to know why you don't see the little banner that tells you my video includes a paid promotion. My Buy Once, Cry Once reviews are not bought and paid for. There are no channel sponsors, I don't have a Patreon, there are no donations or borrowed items in my reviews. All my stuff is stuff I own, saved up for, and splurged on after doing tons of research using online videos and reviews just like this one. So here's the quick rundown. With my own income, I buy expensive, higher-end products from companies that I have no relationship, sponsorship, or benefit from, think so highly of them that I'm spending my free time reviewing and recommending them to you, my viewers, as a one-time money sink. Got it? Cool. I also like to have my channel's full price disclosure at the beginning so you know what type of money we are talking about crying over a single time. My VP9 started life as a law enforcement version, coming with 3 magazines and tritium night sights. I bought it at Scottsdale Gun Club in Scottsdale, Arizona in 2017 for $583.17 after taxes. The long slide kit I found on Gun Accessories for Sale subreddit, and it was $500 shipped. Both slides were milled for an RMR Red Dot in 2018. The factory slide was done at Parker Mountain Machine for $445 and took 9 months. The long slide was done locally at Wright Armory in Mesa, Arizona for $175 and took 3 weeks during April of 2020. Yeah, during the pandemic panic buying spree. I love those guys. The RMR Type 2 was purchased at B&H Photo in 2018 for $471.22. Both slides have Heine straight 8 suppressor height night sights and were installed by Heine in Illinois for $50 in labor per slide and $166.07 for the sights per gun. I have 22 factory HK magazines for this gun, and they ranged in price from $60 to $43 a piece. All in total, minus the magazines, the VP9 as it sits here was $2,606.53. The P30L I found used in Washington on Arms List for $850. It came with the factory case and 8 magazines, 5 of which had extended base plates installed on them. The gun had the Grey Guns short reset kit installed and is the LEM trigger variant. I purchased a factory threaded HK barrel off the HK web shop for $175. It also had a set of Heine straight 8 night sights installed on it. In total, I have $1,241.07 into it as it sits. The USP Expert was a flat $1,000, and I found it here locally used. It came with the factory case, is the non-jet funnel version, and had a total of 2 magazines with it. I've not changed anything on the pistol as of this filming, but I will be converting the matched double action, single action trigger to the LEM hybrid variant without the manual safety. HK has an interesting history and beginning. Officially named Heckler & Koch GmbH, it is a defense manufacturing company founded in Oberndorf in the southwestern part of Germany. At the end of World War II, the village of Oberndorf was under French control. Located inside the township proper was the Mauser machine gun factory. In order to prevent the country from rearming and making weapons, the local French army commander ordered the entire former machine gun factory to have all the machinery dismantled and all related records and blueprints destroyed. 3 former Mauser engineers salvaged what tooling they could from the factory and used the same location to start a company in 1948 known as the Engineering Office Heckler & Co. The engineers were Edmund Heckler, Theodor Koch, and Alex Schiedel. The company officially changed its name in December of 1949 from Engineering Office Heckler & Company to Heckler & Koch GmbH. They manufactured machine tooling, bicycle and sewing machine components, as well as gauges and other precision parts. It wasn't until 1956 that HK designed their first firearm in response to the German government's request for a new infantry rifle for the Federal Army. HK's proposed design won the contract in 1959 and is now known the world over as the G3 battle rifle. Without going too deep into every facet of HK's business, development cycle, and firearm they have ever made, let's just say this. HK is well known for its firearms. They are iconic symbols, arguably as recognized by non-gun enthusiasts as an AK-47 is. Just off the top of my head, my personal grail guns are the MP5, I'd like the SD variant, an MP7, the PSG-1 sniper rifle, the 416, a P7 M8, a Mark 23, and of course the G36. Do you love video games as much as I do? Then you've equipped just about every HK firearm known to man on your characters. You love Die Hard and classify it as a Christmas movie because HK is playing a starring role? Same. I bet I can make you think of the best HK on-screen performance of all time just by asking you this question. Yo homie, is that my briefcase? You're in the right place. You're watching this video because you know, and if you know, you're probably looking at expanding your HK collection or about dipping your toe into the most expensive pool you will ever swim in. If you only care about one of the guns I'm reviewing in this video, here's the timestamps for each model I'm discussing. I'm going to start with the VP9L, the entry-level striker-fired pistol. From there, we will talk about the gun that Jardani Jonovic made famous, my daily carry, hammer-fired, the P30L. Which means we're saving the most famous for last. Lara Croft, Jack Bauer, Vincent, and Solid Snake all use the USP. I'll be discussing the USP Expert. I'm going to be talking about as much of each feature and design element I can, from the barrel to the trigger, how it feels to shoot, its accuracy, and what you might want each one for. Before we go into any further detail about any of the guns, I just want to start out and say that this was filmed over multiple weeks because I had an issue. In fact, my VP9 actually broke right before I started filming this, and I had to send it back to HK for warranty. It was sadly not able to be repaired and had to be replaced with a new one. So, with that, let's get into it. As promised, we'll start with the VP9L chambered in 9x19 Parabellum. So the VP in VP9 stands for Volkspistol, and it translates from German to English to the People's Pistol. Basically, it's for poor people who can't get a real HK, and I'm only half kidding because the snobs that own things like the PSG sniper rifle, the P7 M13, the MP5Ks, 416s, they tend to look down on the VP9 buyers because they can only afford a sub $600 pistol. I love mine, but it was not my first HK purchase. I don't have that snobby attitude, although I do look down on you if this is your only HK. Like, get a job, man. Buy a real goddamn gun, will you? The 9 in VP9 is what caliber it's chambered for. In this case, 9mm. The VP40 is chambered in 40 Smith & Wesson. Let's talk about the overall specs. So the VP9 is chambered in 9x19 Parabellum. It has an overall length of 7.34 inches. It is 5.41 inches high and 1.31 inches wide. The slide is made of high-strength carbon steel forging blanks. Yes, they are that high quality and the machining is that good. It's HK, so think no compromise when you learn about all the technology they use to make these pistols. The slide itself has some great features incorporated into it. It has serrations milled into the rear to aid in racking the slide. The front has matching serrations, but on the long version, they are cut through and reduce weight and expose the barrel. The rear of the slide has two interesting features. At the back of the serrations is a pair of plastic cocking assist handles to aid in pulling the slide rearward with your non-dominant hand. At the very back of the slide is an access plate with a hole in it. This allows visual inspection of the striker to see if it is cocked or not. If you can see a red dot, the striker is cocked and ready to fire. If you see a black hole, the striker has been fired and will not cycle and will need to be racked to reset it. The front of the long slide tapers inward near the end of the barrel, and the recoil spring pocket is hollow to reduce weight and to allow the use of the same length recoil spring assembly from the regular VP9. The barrel in the VP9 starts life out as a forged steel blank. The blank will undergo some very intense machining and cold hammer processing before coming the final product. To begin, the barrel is first drilled out for the cold hammer process. The forging gets drilled from front to back and is larger than what the end result will be. This is because to cold hammer forge the rifling into the barrel, the metal needs to be shrunk around a mandrel that is inserted into the hollow forging. Cold hammer forging is where a hardened steel mandrel is inserted into a forging blank and is hammered until the metal shrinks around the mandrel to form the rifling. It's incredibly labor intensive and makes for a very accurate and long-lasting barrel. The VP9 gets polygonal rifling, which gives it a longer life, requires less cleaning than grooves and land style rifling, and seals against the projectile better to give increased muzzle velocity. Once this step has been completed, the front half of the barrel is machined to outer diameter and length, and the remainder of the blank becomes the locking block, while the inner portion becomes the chamber. The barrel on a VP9 is 4.1 inches long, while the long slide is 5 inches. The long slide barrel does have an O-ring at the end to help it seat in the slide and have a more repeatable lockup when it is in battery. This helps with overall accuracy and is the same method used on the Mark 23 designed for SOCOM. The VP9 has a sight radius of 6.38 inches, and on my law enforcement version came with tritium night sights. The long slide has a long sight radius of 7.2 inches and came from the factory with competition sights. The rear was an adjustable blank rear, and the front was a red fiber optic style. At the time of my purchases of the VP9 and the long slide kit, HK did not offer their pistols with optic cuts from the factory. As of 2021, all the VP9 variants can be had from the factory with an optic cut and cover plate. If you plan on using a red dot optic on your pistol, this will save some time and money as you no longer have to send it out to a machine shop to have the slide milled. The drawback of having a factory optic ready slide is that you need to buy the matching optic mounting plate for your chosen red dot optic. There are many different footprint mounting patterns for the miniature red dots, and there are many optic plate adapters for each style. The mounting plate number 2 is the most popular as it is the RMR style mounting pattern and is often out of stock or going for largely inflated prices online. Additionally, the optic plate makes the red dot sit higher than an optic that was milled by an aftermarket shop. This makes finding iron sights that can co-witness more of a challenge than it would be on a factory slide. On both my factory length and my long slide, I had the slide milled to accept a Trijicon RMR. This is my preferred optic footprint, as I can also install a larger SRO optic onto it, and it sits lower into the slide, making my presentation feel more natural. When deciding to use a red dot optic on your pistol, I highly recommend you start to practice your draw and presentation, as it is truly different than an iron sight presentation. Finding the dot quickly and naturally requires lots of training and a new approach to what you might already be doing with your non-optic pistols. Look at the link below for some great red dot presentation tips for one of the fastest shooters out there, Scott Jedi Jedinsky of Modern Samurai Project. His videos have made me a much better shooter, and I am dying to take a class from him. At the same time I was having my slide milled for the optics, I chose to change over the factory height sights to Heine suppressor height straight 8 night sights so I could co-witness them against the dot and have a backup aiming solution should my dot fail. With straight 8 sights, the eye is great at stacking things in a vertical alignment, so it does so intuitively. They also help you find the dot in the window of the optic as they start to align naturally. These straight 8 sights are truly amazing for fast sight indexing, as there is no confusion from your non-dominant eye when it comes to aligning the dots. The VP9 is striker fired as opposed to a hammer fired gun. If you're not familiar with the difference, it's pretty basic. A hammer fired gun has an external spring-loaded hammer that strikes the firing pin when the trigger sear is disconnected. The action is directly connected to the trigger in the sense that if the hammer falls on a live round and does not fire, you can pull the trigger again to repeat the mechanical action. A striker-fired pistol has no mechanical hammer linked to the trigger. Instead, it has a spring-loaded striker pin that gets released inside the frame when the trigger sear is released. Should the striker fail to ignite the round, the action must be reset manually by racking the slide. There is no second strike option like a hammer-fired gun. On a striker-fired gun, the trigger becomes dead after each pull if the round does not cycle the action. They are very reliable, typically have a better trigger feel than a hammer gun, and are used by lots of manufacturers, Glock being the main one that comes to mind. From the factory, the rear of the slide has a small window plate so you can visually see the state of the striker itself. If you can see a small red dot, the striker is cocked and ready to fire. If you see a black circle, the striker has been cycled and is no longer ready to be shot and needs to have the slide manually actuated to recock it. The VP9 uses a captured recoil spring and guide rod assembly. The factory weight is 17 pounds for a 9mm. It's easy to remove from the slide and barrel with no tools and can only be assembled correctly in one orientation. The front part of the rod assembly has a split end that retains the spring and a washer that goes into the end of the slide. The other side of the rod is a machined flat cylinder that sits into the underside of the locking block of the barrel. The spring itself is a flat coil. The slide release on a VP9 is truly ambidextrous and lands in the same position on the right and left hand side of the gun. The right hand lever is longer than the left side and is really just an alternate lever that acts upon the left side's slide stop. The left side is the actual mechanism that locks the slide back. Both levers are made of steel and have a nice machine texture on them to help actuate them in both the up and down directions of travel. Moving either side lever will actuate the other side as they are slaved to each other mechanically. Depending on your preferred grip style and size of your hands, you might have a problem with your master thumb riding the lever and preventing the last round bolt hold open. I certainly do occasionally, and I've been working to change my grip slightly to get a more consistent slide lock, as it helps me reload faster when I don't have to cycle the slide. Total travel of these levers is roughly 3/8 of an inch from rest to locked. This magazine has dummy rounds in it. These are non-live ammo. The neat feature about an HK pistol is that when the slide is locked back and the pistol is empty, inserting a loaded mag and slamming it home will automatically release the slide, chambering the round and getting it up and running faster than having to manually cycle the slide release or racking it with your support hand. The VP9, the P30, and the USP all have this feature. The frame on the VP9 is reinforced polyamide. The polymer is incredibly durable and lightweight. Think of it as like tactical Tupperware. Embedded into the polymer frame are steel inserts along the middle and rear for slide channels to ride along. The sear, the trigger, the magazine, and the slide release assemblies are all housed within the polymer frame. The trigger guard has a cutout at the bottom for trigger clearance as it travels. At the bottom of the frame are two half-moon reliefs molded into the grip. These are to provide additional grip for stripping the magazine out of a frame during a malfunction. The way the VP9 frame feels in your hand is the most impressive part. No matter what your hand size, it really feels like the frame was molded to your hand. It feels like a mechanical extension of you. There are 3 side panel sizes for the right and left side of the grip and 3 back straps, so you can tailor the fitment of the pistol to your hand. It really feels amazing in hand, as if it was made for you, the individual. Replacement of these panels is quick and an easy swap. There is a small roll pin at the bottom rear of the edge of the magazine well, and tapping this roll pin out with a metal punch allows you to slide the back strap off of the frame. From there you can replace the right and left grip panels to suit your desired grip, as well as the backstrap itself. The panels come in small, medium, and large sizes, as do the backstraps. This allows the user to tailor the width and depth of the grip on the frame to be exactly how you would like it to feel for your hand size. There are 27 combos that you can run to find the perfect fit for your hand, and once you have found your desired combo, simply tap the roll pin back into the frame and you're all set. Since starting the filming of this episode, I had to send my frame back to HK under warranty as my sear block encountered a crack that made the pistol stop returning to battery. It was sadly not able to be repaired and had to be replaced with a new one. Because of the high demand of the pistol in the US market, there was a 4-month wait for a replacement black frame. HK customer service was the best experience I've ever had, and they called me to give me some updates and options if I did not want to wait for the black frame. The VP9 frame comes in 4 different options. Standard black with the magazine paddle release, standard black with a push-button magazine release, flat dark earth with the paddle release, and this olive green with the paddle release. I decided to go with the olive green replacement frame as most of my kit is Ranger green, and I thought this would look better than black. And boy was I right. It looks incredible. Once they gave me a replacement frame, I had the gun in my hand in 2 days. I love the crew at HK. They're really stand-up people and have great communication. The VP9 trigger is pretty nice for a stock trigger. The trigger itself has a safety tab that must be depressed in order for you to break the shot. If I don't press it, can't move the trigger. As soon as I press it, I can break my shot. There is no external manual safety on the frame or on the slide. In that respect, it is very similar to a Glock. The trigger itself is a curved polymer style trigger. It has a slightly gritty take-up before you hit a wall, and travel is roughly a tick under a ½ inch. Once you're at the wall, it is a firm stop before you go to the required 6.5 pound break. The finish is just past the halfway point, and reset is relatively short and positive before you can get back on the wall again. It's not the worst trigger I've ever felt, and is much nicer than a factory Glock 17 or 19 trigger is out of the box. You might have noticed that in some of the video I took of the gun that there is a flat-faced trigger in the frame. At one point I had upgraded the factory trigger to the F2 trigger from Lazy Wolf, sold under hkparts.net. I need to issue a warning about this trigger to those that might have one already or those that might want to upgrade to it in the future. My Lazy Wolf trigger failed on my pistol during some live fire practice. The safety tab on the trigger sheared off and caused the trigger to jam into the frame and become inoperable. I could not fix it at the range, and the gun became a very expensive paperweight. Now, my gripe is this. This is the only safety on a firearm that is used as a defensive tool. It should be able to withstand hundreds of thousands of repetitions and cycles without a failure. Because this, at the time, was my concealed carry weapon that I depended on to save lives, I had to stop carrying the gun for anything other than fun range time. I removed the broken, safetyless F2 Lazy Wolf trigger, and I went back to stock. I will no longer use any part on this tool that isn't a factory HK part, and will not recommend doing any business with hkparts.net. To most of the shooting world, HK-style magazine releases are seen as odd or non-traditional. Nearly every modern style of pistol ever made has the magazine release on the left side of the frame in the style of a push button. This is often reversible to be on the right side of the frame to accommodate left-handed shooters, but I would not consider that to be ambidextrous. When a gun is truly ambi, a left-handed shooter needs to do nothing to have the same controls on the gun that a right-handed shooter gets. The VP9 is truly ambi in that respect. The magazine release is a paddle-style release, and is located at the bottom rear of the trigger guard. It can be depressed with the thumb on your master grip hand, the trigger finger on your master grip hand, or in really any manner that you feel works for your grip and hand size. If you were trained on a push-button style mag release, this will take some getting used to. There is also the VP9B model that has a traditional frame-mounted button style of magazine release if you prefer not to retrain yourself for a different brand of gun. This gun has an excellent feeling grip. These finger grooves are one of the only designs I have ever appreciated on a gun. I've said that this gun feels like it was molded after my own hand, and that has rang true with everyone that has picked it up and handled it. Your hand and palms conform to the frame like it's made of clay. The texture is nice and grippy, and you can get a high mount on the gun when you hold it. The side panels and the back strap come in 3 sizes, so you can configure the width and thickness of the grip to suit your hand size. The front underside of the frame is molded with standard mil-spec 1913 Picatinny rail, so that it will accept any rail-mounted accessory without special adapters. I actually used a rifle bipod on mine to help zero the red dot and get a really stable platform for getting a grouping before making any adjustments to the optic. The P30L in 9mm by 19 Parabellum. So the P30 is the successor to the P2000 and the USP series of pistols. With the introduction of the P2000 in 2001, you could see some of the carryover design elements of the USP Compact, such as the entire slide assembly, but with an updated feel and look in the frame. The P2000 started HK down the path of a more ergonomic pistol, and by 2006 the P30 series of pistols were the final culmination of all the lessons learned from the USP and the P2000. Originally to be called the P3000, the company dropped 2 zeros and named the pistol the P30. The slide starts life out as a blank forging made of high-strength carbon steel. It is machined to perfection by the finest German CNC tooling known to man. On the rear of the slide are 8 curved serrations milled into each side to aid in charging the pistol. The front has 5 similar serrations milled into the side, but these are straight and have no curvature. These are great for racking the slide with your thumb and webbing of your index finger of your support hand to waste as little motion as possible during reloads or clearing malfunctions. The extractor is located on the right-hand side of the slide and acts as a loaded chamber indicator. When the chamber is empty and the extractor has no brass to grip onto, it sits flush with the frame. When the weapon has a round in the chamber, the extractor will grip the rim of the casing and sit out at a very slight angle. You might be able to see it like that, exposing a bright red coating on the top of the extractor itself, letting you visually know that there is brass in the chamber. The extraction port of the slide is machined perfectly to match the locking block of the barrel. On the lower left side of the slide is a cutout for the takedown assembly. Behind that is a little notch for the slide catch to keep the slide locked back. The P30L barrel starts life out as a forged steel blank. The entire blank gets drilled out from front to back to be larger than the bore needs to be. The overall length is also still longer than the final length barrel will become after the cold hammer forging process. The inside of the barrel gets the HK polygonal rifting profile. To achieve this, the barrels are cold hammer forged. This process involves forging the blank around a mandrel that has the reverse impression of the rifling. The mandrel is inserted into the machined hole of the forged blank, and then large hammers strike the outer portion of the barrel while it is rotating to form a perfect bore around the mandrel. Basically, the metal is being shrunk and formed to become a precise rifled bore. This polygonal style of rifling is superior to the sharp edge style lands and grooves rifling found in most barrels of pistols. Polygonal rifling has a few advantages over regular rifling. The way it is formed does not compromise the thickness of the barrel along the length of the rifling. It provides a better seal around the projectile of the round, especially helpful in larger bores like 45 ACP. There is less bullet deformation, which helps reduce friction, increasing muzzle velocity. It reduces copper and lead buildup, making it easier to maintain, and requires less cleaning. It also keeps wear down, making barrel life longer. Now, HK did not invent polygonal rifling, but it was the first to bring it back to firearms since the Civil War rifles used by the Confederacy sharpshooters. These days, it is much more common as manufacturers like CZ, Glock, and Walther have started using it. Once this step has been completed, the front half of the barrel is machined to outer diameter and length, and the remainder of the blank becomes the locking block. The P30L barrel length is 4.4 inches long. The threaded barrel is 5 inches long and is threaded in 13.5 by 1 millimeter left-hand thread. The P30L has a sight radius of 6.42 inches. From the factory, mine came with optional tritium night sights, but there is not an optics-ready slide available from HK at this time. I've replaced the factory sights with Heine straight 8 night sights. These sights are fantastic. The sight picture is easy to align with both eyes open because there is no confusion from your non-dominant eye. On traditional 3-dot sights, you need to align all 3 dots in a horizontal plane. This can cause issues as your non-dominant eye will pick up the dots at an angle and add confusion to what you are actually seeing. You can misalign the dots very easily, and most people close one eye to eliminate this problem. With straight 8 sights, you are stacking one dot on top of another to form a figure 8. The front dot is larger than the rear, and your eyes can pick up a vertical stack alignment without any interference from your non-dominant eye, as the other eye sees them aligned horizontally. This is great for fast target acquisition and sight picture alignment when shooting with both eyes open. If you plan on carrying any pistol for self-defense, I feel night sights are a requirement, but a red dot is the best option. If you can get a co-witness suppressor height sight with a red dot, you have the fastest pistol index you can get once you learn how to get it. It takes lots of training to be consistent. The P30 models of pistols, including the long slide and the SK short slide, are all hammer-fired pistols. There are 7 trigger variants of the hammer-style firing mechanism. Most will be familiar with the version 3, which is a double-action, single-action with a decocker on the rear of the slide. My variant is the V1, known as the LEM or CDA. LEM stands for Law Enforcement Modification, and CDA stands for Combat Defensive Action. The LEM trigger is hard to explain. It's like a double-action, single-action trigger in some respects, but not at all like it in others. The best way I can describe it is that it feels like a single action only trigger with a very long initial trigger pull. The first difference between a V3 and a V1 is that because there is no decocking button on the V1, there is no way to release a cocked mainspring without depressing the trigger on an empty chamber. It also cannot be carried hammer back, as there is no true single action mode. The hammer is always at rest. As the trigger is pulled, the hammer begins to cock backward until you come to the wall. Once the trigger breaks and the shot goes off, the shot cycles, chambers a new round, and cocks the mainspring. If you were to release the trigger back to its reset and fire again, it is like being in single action mode for each shot thereafter. But as soon as you want to stop firing and the trigger goes back to a long initial pull and the hammer stays down. Now it does have a double action that if you pull the trigger, it will recock the mainspring and drop the hammer on the chamber again. Should the round go off, it will return to single action style trigger presses. I love this trigger. This gun came pre-installed with a Grey Guns short reset kit in it, which reduced the travel of the reset 45% from the factory length travel. Now, there is no manual or exterior safety lever unless you see an S at the end of a P3 model. Then it has an exterior manual safety added to it and can work with all 7 trigger variants. An example is the P30LS. The HK P30L uses a captured recoil spring and guide rod assembly that also has a buffer that rides on the outside of the spring assembly. Factory weight is 12 pounds for a 9mm. It is easy to remove from the slide and barrel assembly with no tools and can only be assembled correctly in one orientation. One thing I appreciate about HK pistols is that they are truly ambidextrous. The slide catch lever is on both sides of the gun, lands in the same spot on both sides, is easy to use either when locking the slide back or releasing it forward. The lever itself is made of steel, has a nice texture to grip against for both travel directions. Total travel is roughly 3/8 of an inch for lock and release. It is, however, in a prime spot to have your thumbs ride the lever, and you might not get slide lock on an empty magazine while shooting it. That's what I thought. I was like, that was 15 rounds. The frame on the P30L is reinforced polyamide. The polymer is incredibly durable and lightweight. There are steel inserts along the middle and rear of the slide for the channels to ride along. The hammer, the trigger, the magazine, and slide release assemblies are all housed within the polymer frame. The trigger guard has a cutout at the bottom for trigger clearance for when it travels. The smart move by HK was making the frame have replacement panels on the grip. There are 3 side panel sizes for the right and left side of the grip, and 3 back straps so you can tailor the fitment of the pistol to your hand. It really feels amazing in hand, as if it were made for you, the individual. The trigger pull on the V1 LEM variant is considered light at 4.5 pounds. Now, that is only when the mainspring is cocked. If the gun is decocked, or in this variant, when the hammer falls on an empty chamber, or has a light primer strike, the trigger pull to recock the mainspring and drop the hammer is 11.5 pounds. So even racking the slide is difficult when the mainspring isn't cocked. Here's how the trigger on the LEM feels and works. When cocked, the initial take-up is very long, but also butter smooth and very light, probably less than a 2-pound pull. Travel is directly related to the hammer cocking back as well. You will hit a very pronounced wall at the rear, and this is where the trigger would be considered prepped. Once you hit this wall, you have to start putting more pressure on it to get it to break. There is a tiny amount of mush as you push to this point, and the trigger breaks at just under 5 pounds of pressure. From the wall to break, you are pushing roughly 1/8 of an inch to get the break. After the gun cycles, the mainspring resets, and as you let the trigger right forward to the reset point, roughly, 3/8 of an inch, then you can get right back on that wall again. Anytime you release the trigger fully, it will go back to that light, long take-up, and the hammer will reset. This P30L has the short reset kit from Grey Guns, which helped reduce the travel of the reset from more than half of the travel to that 3/8 of an inch for much quicker follow-up shots. I'd say for a hammer-fired gun, this V1 LEM P30 has an excellent trigger. Highly recommend this combo. Unless your P30L has an S at the end of its model, you have no exterior or manual safety levers on the gun. I prefer that on a carry gun myself, as there is no chance that if I'm ready to fire that I'll need to disable anything to break my shot. The gun has internal drop safety mechanisms, and with the LEM style trigger, I need to be deliberate to fire the gun. If you prefer exterior manual safeties, any variant can have the manual safety added to it. Or if you have an S model and wish you didn't, it can be removed as well with some replacement parts and pins. Here's where the Glock guys will tell you that HKs are weird. The magazine release. It's ambidextrous, just like the slide release is, and can be operated from the right or the left side of the pistol. But it's not a traditional frame-mounted push-button release. It's referred to as a paddle release, and it sits at the bottom rear of the trigger guard. Now, when a Glock fanboy tells you that his gun is ambi too, let him know that it isn't. To get a magazine release for a left-hand shooter on a Glock, you need to reverse the button and put it on the other side of the frame. That is not ambi, that is configurable. With HK-style paddle release, you can actuate the magazine release in a few different ways, whether you're right or wrong-handed. You can do it like I do and break your grip and use your thumb on the left side of the pistol. You can be an enigma and use your trigger finger on the right-hand side of the pistol. You can be a hybrid and use your thumb and index finger and pinch the paddle to really confuse people. It takes some getting used to, but I started life in the pistol world on HK guns, so it's normal for me at this point, and I find frame-mounted buttons odd. The grip on the P30L is one of the best features about it. As I alluded to earlier, there are 3 sizes of side panels and back straps so that you can tailor the width and the depth of the grip to be perfect to your hand size. You have small, medium, and large side panel inserts for the right and left grip surfaces, and the same for the back strap. Customization is simple with a rubber mallet, a punch, and a block of wood. Just tap out the roll pin on the back of the bottom of the grip, slide the back strap down, and the side panels will slide out. Then you can play around with some of the inserts until you find the one that makes you feel like this gun is an organic extension of you. I think there are something like 27 combos to choose from. While the look and feel is similar to the VP9 grip and frame, the parts are not interchangeable. HK is notorious for creating their own non-industry standard interfaces. On the P30 series of frames, they decided to go with a standard mil-spec 1913 Picatinny rail system. You can use flashlights, lasers, bipods. I've done that. Anything that can be mounted to a standard pick rail can be mounted to the bottom of the rail on the P30. In that regard, it is well thought out and universal. I'm not law enforcement nor military, and I don't carry weapons with lights mounted to them. I'm not going to be doing dark room clearing when I'm out and about. And if I'm in my home, I'm going to be using a rifle over a pistol. If you don't already watch it, go follow my local guy John Correa at Active Self-Protection. He breaks down self-defense encounters from the real world that were caught on video. In his reviews of thousands of deadly force encounters, he says 2 things consistently. He has not ever seen a flashlight used in a civilian defense situation, and he has never seen a reload be employed during a civilian firefight. So don't worry if your gun doesn't have a Gucci weapon light or an extra magazine on you. You're very unlikely to use either in a defensive encounter. The USP Expert chambered in 9x19mm Parabellum. The USP stands for Universal Self-Loading Pistol. It was designed in the early 90s to combat the loss of rifle sales in the US market thanks to the automatic weapons ban of 1986 and to offset the huge investment loss of the G11 caseless ammunition rifle. Before the USP was released, the P7 was HK's only pistol offering at the time. While incredibly accurate and reliable, it was not well suited to military use or civilian customization. Released at SHOT Show in January of 1993, it became an instant hit within the US market. The design was aimed at law enforcement and military contracts, and the pistol started life out in .40 Smith & Wesson. The USP has lots of industry firsts incorporated into its design, the most notable being the accessory rail under the front part of the frame. The USP was responsible for keeping HK afloat when the company was nearly bankrupt after their Kraut Space Magic project, also known as the G11, was scrapped due to the Cold War ending. The USP Expert was created for competition shooters to get the most out of the USPSA maximum length rules. The USP Match was a short run of target pistols with an extended barrel and a recoil management weight system that attached to the frame. The Expert was a continuation of that idea with specific rule sets followed to give shooters an out-of-the-box edge over other pistols in the market at the time. The slide starts out life as a forged piece of high-strength steel. It is then CNC machined to remove material from the internal components, extraction chamber, and firing pin. It goes through multiple phases of machining before being tested and quality controlled. The rear of the slide, where the hammer assembly rests, and the upper edge of the slide, where the barrel is seated, are given a laser-hardened treatment to further increase durability of the pistol. The entire slide is coated with HK's Hostile Environment finish designed to prevent corrosion from salt water. It is a nitride finish and is exceptionally durable. The slide has 8 serrated blades machined into the rear of the slide to aid in racking the assembly, but none at the front of the slide like the P30 and VP9 models do. The recess for the recoil spring is extended and hollow on the Expert to help reduce mass. The right side of the frame is where the extractor is located. The extractor also acts as a loaded chamber indicator. When the chamber is seated against a casing, it will protrude at a slight angle and show a red band of paint, giving the operator a fast visual inspection as to the status of the weapon. On the Expert slide assembly, the rear sight dovetail is actually recessed into a lower cut shelf. This was to conform to the USPSA overall height and length restrictions placed on production pistols. The barrel starts life out as a long steel blank that is cold hammer forged over a mandrel to form the polygonal rifling. When the barrel starts out, it is larger in diameter than the bore and shorter than the length it will become for the caliber it is designed for. In fact, one blank becomes 5 barrels after the cold hammer forging process, and they are then trimmed down. The cold hammer process involves a machine that is striking the outside of the barrel with 4 hammers at 140,000 pounds of pressure per beat and 1,000 beats per minute. Inside the barrel is a reverse polygonal rifling pattern mandrel. The hammers strike the steel blank, forming it to the inside of the mandrel and creating the rifling. Once the forging process is done, the blank is cut into the correct length for each barrel, and then the outside diameter is trimmed on a lathe. The remaining material is machined to form the locking block and, internally, the chamber. To prove how durable the gun was during testing, the USP fired 10,000 rounds without a stoppage, and under endurance testing did another 20,000 more without a single stoppage. The barrel was then tested for extreme conditions by lodging a spent casing round 30 millimeters from the end of the barrel and was cleared by firing a round to dislodge it. The barrel did balloon slightly, but was still able to continue firing and held acceptable accuracy. The sights on the USP are from an aftermarket company out of Italy on the Expert. The dovetail itself is recessed into the slide to decrease the overall height. This was made to conform to the rules within the shooting sports community. The rear sight is adjustable for both windage and elevation, while the front sight is a fixed fiber optic style, similar to the one found on the VP9L B long slide kit. The USP series of pistols are all hammer-fired. There are 7 variants that will determine if the multifunction lever is on the right or left-hand side of the frame, whether the trigger is double action only, double action and single action, or even the LEM variant. The multifunction lever can be a safety lever, a decocker, or a combo of both. The Expert USP is a double-action, single-action hammer-fired variant with the multifunction lever installed on the left and the right-hand side of the frame. Regular USP full-size frames have the multifunction lever installed typically only on the left side of the frame. The recoil spring and guide rod assembly are the captured type in the USP pistol. There are 2 recoil springs housed along the guide rod. The main spring is what helps with recoil operation of loading, chambering, and extraction, and the smaller, more compressed spring aids in slowing the barrel's rearward travel after the round is fired and to aid in helping the slide return into action at the end of its travel. This design is said to aid in a 30% reduction in felt recoil and is immune to different ammunition types. This allows the USP to have an extended firing of +P or ++P ammunition types. The slide release on the USP is only on the left side of the frame and is not ambidextrous like the P30 or VP9. The lever itself is removable for the takedown and field stripping of the gun. The lever is made of high-strength steel and has a textured shelf to aid in positive grip. The grip area is shaped like a trapezoid and only has texture on the top that will aid in slide release. The bottom of the lever has no aids to help lock the slide to the rear. With the multifunction lever in the fire position, I find the slide release lever is blocked by the selector. I need to break my grip, put the weapon on safe, or use my support hand to release the slide. One of the planned upgrades to this USP will be converting the double action, single action manual safety trigger to an LEM hybrid match trigger with the multifunction lever and manual safety deleted. This should aid me in being able to reach the slide release and improve my reload times with this gun. The frame on the USP was revolutionary for its day. Made of polymer, the frame incorporated molded-in steel reinforcement areas to house the hammer and spring, the sear, the slide rails, the trigger assembly, and the magazine release. It is very lightweight and incredibly durable. The frame has an extended trigger guard, so it can be used with thick winter gloves. The frame is also shared across the USP full-size, tactical, and expert model types. The upper slides are the difference between those. The USP was a one-size approach, however, and there are no different panels or back straps to change out or adjust the pistol grip for different sized hands. The USP Expert has a match-style double-action, single-action trigger. The match trigger is easy to identify as it has the adjustable stop on the back side of the trigger to tune out the over travel of the length of pull. To get the pistol into double action mode once it is chambered and loaded, simply sweep the multifunction lever downward with your thumb until the hammer is released. The pistol will now have a long first pull of roughly 7.5 pounds. Once the first shot is fired and the slide cycles, the trigger will remain in single action mode and has a trigger pull of roughly 4 pounds. The double action pull has an initial take up of roughly ½ an inch before you start to get to that 7-pound rearward pull. There is a wall at the end of this travel, but it is hard to judge when the shot will break as that initial pull is quite heavy. In single action mode, there is still that initial ½ inch of take up before you come to a very distinct hard wall. That wall only requires 4 pounds to break and has a smooth, flat finish. The reset is short and crisp, but it does have 2 distinct clicks along its reset travel. The first click will not allow a follow-up shot if pulled from that spot. You need to release the trigger another 1/16 of an inch before the trigger is fully reset and you can break another shot. My first time firing this gun, I made the mistake of not letting the trigger fully reset, and it slowed down my shooting as I thought I had a dead trigger. Wow, trigger reset is longer than I anticipate. This is my second USP. My very first gun purchase ever was a USP 45 Compact. Because I did not know to dry fire and train without live rounds to increase my skill, I used to hate the trigger pull on that gun. The double action weight was so heavy, I used to have nightmares that I would need to use the 45 Compact in a self-defense situation, and I couldn't get the trigger to break without using 2 fingers on the trigger, pulling as hard as I possibly could. I ended up selling that gun to fund the P30L purchase, as I didn't shoot it that much after getting the VP9, and I wanted all my handguns to use one ammo type and share magazines if possible. The safety on the USP is frame-mounted and is incorporated into the multifunction lever on the left and right-hand side of the gun. The multifunction lever is marked clearly with a white S and a red F, and the frame has a white line painted along the back to show which position the gun is currently in. Flip the multifunction lever up to place the gun on safe. Pull the lever down to place the gun on fire. The lever itself has very positive clicks going into safe and onto fire. To decock the hammer, sweep the lever all the way downward and the hammer will fall. Following the P7 M8 and M13 striker-fired pistol design, the USP uses a paddle-style magazine release located at the back of the trigger guard where it meets the frame. The paddle release on the USP is much smaller than the P30 or VP9, but it is still activated the same way. It is ambidextrous and can be activated from the right and left side of the trigger guard. There is no push-button variant available in the USP. The grip is very blocky in your hand, but not in a bad way. It manages to feel very good in the hand, and its thickness and length makes it very comfortable for my hand size. On the sides there is textured grip molded into the length that is aggressive without being uncomfortable. The front and rear use these small raised textured pyramids that keep you in positive control under recoil. You will feel the lack of ergonomics if you shoot a few hundred rounds through it during a single day, like during a pistol class. You probably did not know that the USP series of pistols pioneered the addition of an accessory rail. Before HK created this adapter system, there were no factory standard options available to install lights or lasers onto a pistol. It is also why the rail on a USP is not an adapted industry standard pattern. It was revolutionary for its design at the time and was widely adopted by the military and police. The UTL was the first accessory created for the pistol and stands for Universal Tactical Light. This was made by another vendor outside of HK known as Insight. Insight is a division of the parent company Kokar Management. They own some more well-known brands such as L3 and EOTech. The second accessory developed for the new rail mount pattern was the LAM for the Mark 23. LAM stands for Laser Aiming Module and was for night vision and visible light use. These days, the rail is considered to be an unusual pattern and will not accept normal current day accessories without an adapter. So let's talk the overall feel. The USP has the best feeling of the three long slides. The way the slide feels when it's racked makes it feels like it's on another level of smoothness when compared to the VP9 or the P30. The USP feels like it is on ball bearings. It just glides along the frame and has a precise fitment and tolerances. The P30, while nice, does not have that same level of feel and craftsmanship that the USP has. It feels much nicer than the VP9 does, however. When you rack the VP9, it just feels pretty basic. The action does not glide back and it isn't super smooth. When it comes to ranking these guns, the USP is always the top dog in all aspects of fit, finish, trigger, and design. The P30 is second, and the VP9 really feels like an entry-level gun on par with Glock, M&P, and Canik. When it comes to recoil and managing that recoil, the USP is the clear winner. The slide has more mass and length, and the dual recoil spring really makes a noticeable difference. The VP9 is second as it is a flat shooting gun out of the box. I incorporate this to the low bore axis in comparison to the other two guns. The P30 shoots flat, but it is not as easy to control as the USP or VP9 is. All three guns are, as always, more accurate than I am as a shooter. The barrels in HK firearms are the heart of the gun, and these guns are tack drivers. The USP wins first place again, as it is super easy to make a ragged hole with. The trigger and O-ring barrel are a huge factor in this. The VP9L comes in second because of that same O-ring barrel, making lockup more consistent. The P30L is last for me, and while I can make a ragged hole with it, it does take much more concentration and practice to do so. Now, the point of aim, or the index, the VP9 has the most excellent index of all three pistols in the bunch. I find the low bore axis helps me drive the weapon to where I'm looking, and I'm able to make faster hits with the VP9 than any of the other guns. I do attribute that to my dry fire practice and the red dot. The P30L grabs second place for a quick index from the draw and points very naturally. The USP is quick to get on target, but is a bit slower for me as it weighs more and is not as snappy as the P30 or VP9. Now, I use each of these guns differently. The VP9 was my daily carry until the Lazy Wolf trigger failed on me. It is now used only at the range as a fun target pistol. The P30L is my new daily carry, and I am looking to having the slide milled for an RMR. I trust the P30 to be more reliable than my VP9 at this point, as I've had multiple issues with the VP9. I will say those issues are likely self-inflicted, as I put lots of totally unnecessary aftermarket parts into it from hkparts.net. As of this filming, I have reverted the VP9 back to all factory HK parts, and it is running flawlessly. The USP to me is a competition pistol, but if I had night sights on it, I would not hesitate to use it as a duty weapon. It would be my first choice as a battle-proven weapon, as it's built like a tank, and I know it will run after putting it through torturous conditions. Now, when it comes to aftermarket upgrades, I have tried and been found wanting. HK pistols don't need any upgrades to be killer pistols. Now, I am happy as I can be with my Grey Guns short reset kit in my P30, the Heine night sights, and my RMR red dot. Outside those modifications, I would not change a thing. on these guns. When I got my holsters, there were more options than there are at the time of this filming. For my VP9, I have a sidecar, and it's an appendix carry holster from T-Rex Arms. They no longer list them on their website, but I bet if enough people called or emailed, they would remake them. On this VP9 holster, I did have to trim it on the bottom with a cutoff wheel on a Dremel tool to make room for the long slide to pass through. I also have a Ragnarok holster from T-Rex Arms on a Safariland QLS fork, and it did not require any mods for the red dot or the long slide. It does not have any active retention though. My P30L also has a sidecar appendix carry holster from T-Rex Arms, and this one fits the P30L with the threaded barrel without any modifications. They no longer list it on their website, but they do have the ability to make it. For my battle belt, I run a Safariland ALS holster on a QLS fork system as it has active retention. When I wear a coat or a suit, I use a holster from Odin to carry the P30L. Now, my USP has a Safariland on order that is also the ASL style retention holster. This will also use the QLS fork to allow quick swapping on and off my battle belt. Last thing we're going to talk about when it comes to the overall feel of these guns is the weight. The VP9 comes in at 2 pounds 2 ounces with 18 rounds of 147 grain plus P Hornady hollow point ammunition. The P30 also comes in at 2 pounds 2 ounces with 18 rounds of 147 grain ammo. The USP came in at 2 pounds 4 ounces with only 16 rounds of 147 grain plus P hollow points. Now the conclusion. If I could only have one of these, which would I choose? Man, I'd hate to have to make that choice as I love all three of them for different reasons, but if I had to choose, I would pick the P30L. It is the best all-around carry and duty gun, has an excellent feel and trigger, and would accept a red dot should I choose to add one down the road. Plus you can LARP around your mom's basement, pretending to be John Wick. You really can't go wrong with any of the HK pistols, including ones that I did not review today, such as the P7 series, the P2000, the HK45. That's kind of the problem. HK pistols are incredible guns. You don't want to stop at one or two of the models. You want more of them. The more you handle and shoot, the more models you want to collect. So, do I think an HK pistol is worth the coin over something like a Glock or Beretta? God, yes. The USP expert puts a Glock 34 to shame in all respects. But Tyler, if that's the case, why don't more people use them in competitions? Well, price and availability for starters. Magazine costs would be a close second. I mean, HK stuff is not cheap, and if you're saving up for your first handgun, this might be out of reach for you, depending on budget. You need to factor in ammo, spare mags, and a holster if you invest in a handgun. The nice part about having a VP9 and a P30 is that the magazines are interchangeable, and the newest ones bump the capacity from 15 to 17 rounds. If you are looking for a long-lasting pistol that will survive harsh use, then HK is going to be one of the top brands to consider. Owning a Heckler & Koch pistol will not turn you into John Wick though. You still need lots of hours of training in both dry fire and with live ammo to become proficient with your handgun. Gucci guns will not make up for a lack of skill, so get training if you decide to buy an HK pistol. But should you decide that HK fits your needs as a defensive tool, then I say confidently, go ahead and treat yourself, girl, and buy once, cry once. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, give it a like. If you didn't, a dislike. Subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next one.